Hello, everybody. Can I just let me know if the sound's okay? Great. We're going to kick off in a couple of minutes. We just wait for a few more people to come in. Okay, thanks. Okay, welcome everybody. We are now in the pre-seen debrief, for the June 2025 exam. Can you just tell me how many times you've read the pre-seen case study? How many times have you read the pre-seen case study already? Let me know in the group chat how many times you've read the pre-seen case study. Just type a message in the meeting chat. Once, Hannah's gone once. What about Afra, Adam? How many times have you read the pre-seen case study? Adam, two. Afra, twice. Good. So you need to read it a few times. The idea is on the day of the exam, you shouldn't be really referring back to that case study. It should be already in your mind on the day of the exam. So I'm going to go through some of the basics. We don't have any, there'll be a recording of this on YouTube, but there will be no other documentation given. So there will be a recording on YouTube at the end. So I'll just go through the basics to start with. And if you've got any questions, just ask questions as we go. So first thing is, if you've got your phone handy, you can contact me, use this contact form. I can't provide any support because support is a paid service. But if you want to do my courses, any of my courses, you can get in touch using this form. So just scan that form. That's got all my contact details, my WhatsApp there. But please don't send me any mock exams to mark. I will not be doing any marking. That's a paid service. I will not be doing any support questions. That's a paid service. But if you want to ask about any of the courses, this is the contact detail form you need. So we're going to put this video on YouTube later. So if you want to watch it again, you can watch it again. So please, although this is a free pre-seen debrief, please don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube, and then that's going to help me massively to get towards my next target is to get 2,000. So if you can just like and subscribe, that's all I ask of you. If you're watching this video on YouTube, just like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps helps to get the word out about these courses. So also I've got a podcast. So if you want to listen to a podcast based on the pre-seen case study linking to the value chain, then please follow my podcast. My podcast is SBL Guru Podcast. So just wherever you search for your podcast, the latest one is directly relevant to your examination. I'll just put a link in the chat if you want to follow those podcasts. The podcasts are available on Spotify. They're available on YouTube. They're available on Apple. So if you want, I might try and do another one coming up. So that's a totally free podcast. It's also got a load of really good information about all the models. Like if you're not sure about Baldridge, if you're not sure about Balogun or BCG, then there's a podcast on each one of those models. So it's also a free thing you can use, and it will massively help you in the examination. So, but especially this one, because this one is based on a shoe company. I've got another one coming up, which is going to be based around Timberland. So please like and subscribe to the podcast. Just by listening to this 10-minute podcast, it's all the podcasts are like 10 minutes long. It will massively help you in your examination. So for the June exam, all my courses are pretty much sold out. The only one I've got left is one which is the double mock course. On the double mock course, we get a much more detailed version of this video with extra notes based on the pre-seen case study. Not extra notes in total, but extra notes based on the pre-seen case study. There's also a mock 1 on the practice platform based on the pre-seen, so you can sit the mock 1. I've written a mock exam number 1 based on the pre-seen, based on my best guess as to what's going to come on the exam. You can get detailed marking and feedback on that mock, and you'll be able to sit that on Tuesday or Wednesday next week. You get feedback on it, but also you're going to get a second mock based on the pre-seen. So you can have 2 full mocks with answers based on the pre-seen. That is not marked, but there will be a live session on Saturday before the exam where we're going to go through that debrief on mock 2. So if you want 2 mock examinations based on the pre-seen case study, which will really prepare you for the exam. And previously, we've had very good success at having similar questions that we asked on the pre-seen came in the exam. Not exactly the same, but similar topics and similar areas. So if you want to do that, please sign up for that course. And that is the double mock course. Again, I'll just put a link in the chat. Or you can just, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can just go to www.sblguru.com and that will have a link to that course. Remember, on the actual day of the exam, most of the information you will use is going to be based on the actual day of the exam. You should not be, most people say on the actual, in the exam, they only really 10% of the exam is based on the pre-seen. They're not going to be using a lot of the pre-seen, so all the information is in the post-seen. So make sure that you're answering the exam not based on the pre-seen, but based on the post-seen, because that's where the majority of relevant information is going to be on the exam. The most common question I get asked is people say, can they ask BCG? Yes. Can they ask Balogun? Yes. Can they ask contextual change? Yes. So basically, if you're going to ask me, can anything on the syllabus come up? The answer is always yes. And they can ask very niche areas like Baldridge has come up, Balogun has come up. These are kind of areas and models which you might not be so familiar with. So that can come up on the examination. So basically, you need to know everything for the exam. Now, for the pre-seen, the objective of the pre-seen is to give you some industry knowledge. So we know what the industry is. It's a shoe industry. I'm sure you all wear shoes, so you're pretty familiar with that. And make sure you read that pre-seen a few times to make sure you know everything in there in that pre-seen. So you won't need to refer to it on the day of the exam. Basically, on the day of the exam, that should be in your brain, and everything is going to be coming from the post-seen, but you can still draw on the pre-seen. Like I said, 10% of the exam will be based on things that are already mentioned in the pre-seen, but make sure it's in your mind. Every time, if you spend all your time going back to look at the pre-seen, it's going to waste time in your examination. So don't do that. So you don't need to do a lot of additional research, right? The exam is not based on any particular company. It's going to be an amalgam of companies, so you can't really spot the company that they're going to be using in the examination. The shoe companies are quite similar, though, and definitely that podcast will help you to understand the key elements of the market. Don't spend like 20 hours on the pre-seen. I've seen a lot of people on LinkedIn. They're just like they're going to pre-seen details. You know, the exam is not based on the pre-seen. The exam is based on the post-seen. So if you get questions based just on the pre-seen, it will not come in your examination. The exam is based on things that are in the post-seen. So when you're looking at your pre-seen, if something's very clear, you know, then there's not going to be a question which is going to ask you to go back to the pre-seen generally. Post-seen is where the questions are, and you can just draw on the industry analysis in the pre-seen. That's what it's really there for. Your exam is 3 hours 15, and I'm sure you're pretty familiar with it. 3 tasks. Time management is really important for your exam. That's why it's good to practice a mock based on the pre-seen on the practice platform. If you've not used the practice platform, it can be a bit clunky. So please spend some time getting familiar with how to open the windows, etc. It's not like using Word. Don't let the test reach platform be the first thing you look at on the day of the examination. Make sure you practice it before the exam so you become familiar with it. It is a little bit clunky, so you've got to get used to its idiosyncrasies. Okay, 5 professional marks. This is very important for you, that 20% of your exam is based on professional marks. So don't neglect professional marks. They're massive for your examination. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to go through the pre-seen exam now. I'm going to go through the pre-seen exam paper. So can you all see my screen? Yeah. So can you all see the screen that says Strategic Business Leader? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go through it again. You're going to get a copy of this. I'm not going to give you this document, but it will be on YouTube. PDF is only available for paid customers. So sorry about that, Mohammed. It's only available for paid customers. So that's one of the things you get on the double mock course. You're going to get this plus additional notes based on the pre-seen. That's the paid service, but it will be on YouTube. So you can actually look at it and make your own notes. Okay, so there we go. So long established company. First thing I look at there is got politically stable. Maybe there's going to be a question there about PESTEL analysis, political, economic, social, technology. Not been asked for a long time, anything on environment, but it's mentioned there, politically stable country. They seem to manufacture adult and children's shoes, but no sports shoes, right? Sports shoes would seem to be an obvious thing that they're going to do, but they don't have any sports shoes. That could be something that they ask about in the exam, about moving into different product lines to try to achieve growth. Now they've got retail outlets and online. Online definitely will have a higher margin. Retail has got the good customer service, but for retail, you're going to be having a lot of costs such as rental costs, heating costs, staff costs. It's much higher margin if you're online. Now, early on, they mentioned about things like synthetic products, plastic. So it could be a question in the exam where they're going to ask you about some kind of environmental reporting or about how the company impacts on its environment. So it's very popular. They ask questions about transparency in terms of environmental reporting in the exam. It seems like the market is very mature. It's growing at 1% a year. So there's not much growth available in the market. So you might be looking at a question which asks you about how do we achieve growth? How can we get growth? And that could be maybe involving going to an overseas market and some of the problems and issues you might face in overseas markets. When I saw this, I look at there's 5 companies in the market, similar size. So I'm thinking, okay, well, this is competitive rivalry. So if you asked in the exam, competitive rivalry, which model, just tell me in the group chat, which model does competitive rivalry relate to? Which model in the exam does competitive rivalry relate to? Yeah, Porter's 5 forces. So they've not really asked anything on Porter's 5 forces for a long time in the examination. So this one, it seems to be like a good question. You know, it's kind of very much geared towards Porter's 5 forces. You've got the bargaining power of customers. You've got overseas suppliers, you've got like issues there. So make sure you're prepared on excuse me, Porter's 5 forces for the examination, because that is potentially a question they might ask. Of course, they may provide additional information in the post-scene on that. They've got two real production techniques. One is mass production, one is handcrafted. Mass production, it says that they almost all stages are machines, although many of them require human supervision. I just think in the ACCA syllabus, there is a question about, there is a part of the syllabus which mentions robotics. I just wonder whether there is an increased potential in some companies in this market to use robotics in their production process to try and save some of the human costs in the business, although that will have implications for the company. Again, looking at this shoe manufacturing process, we've got cutting, we've got stitching, we've got lasting, we've got finishing. So quite technical terms, but again, could they be automated? Could robots be used in the cutting process to try and achieve some accuracy? Especially like if you listen to my podcast, what I talk about is the fact that the industry is like a lot of people are getting old. The crafts people are getting old. The average age is 55 years old. So there's a need to like replace people with technology going forward. Stitching, can we use robotics? Lasting, can we use 3D printing to produce a mold on our products? Is there any automated AI quality checks we can do? So all these things potentially are areas where we can use technology or automation to try to improve our business. So there is a trend in the market for lower production costs by outsourcing. Now, whenever you're going to go for outsourcing, there is going to be risks to consider. So a big part of the syllabus for SBL is risk management. And later on, it talks about some of those risks. So a popular question they might ask in the exam would be about risk management. So if the question asks you to assess the risks, how do you, what would you, if the question says assess the risks, can you please tell me in the group chat how you would answer that question? Assess the risks. How are you going to answer that question in the exam? If it says assess the risks, how are you going to answer that question in the examination? Assess the risks. So one person say Tara is our first answer. Tara. Yeah, Bin says impact and likelihood, and Camel says probability and impact. Yeah, so if they ask you to assess or analyze the risks, you've got to like do some analysis on the risks, and the way you do that is look at the impact and probability of the risk. Impact and probability. Heat map also would incorporate impact and probability. So remember, if it says assess the risk and all you do is identify the risk, you're not going to be getting good marks in the exam. Assess the risk requires some kind of analysis. Now, if it then says risk management, how do we manage the risk from overseas production? Which model are we going to use? Manage risk management, because risk analysis and risk management are two different things. What are we going to use if they ask you about risk management in the examination? How do we manage the risks? Yes, they're generally going to use Tara model, transfer, avoid, reduce, accept. But remember, you can't just say the solution is transfer. You've always got to explain your risk management strategy, link it back to the case, give examples, link it back to the case, link it back to the shoe industry. That's the important thing, right? If some student says, the strategy is to reduce risk, and then says nothing else, they're not going to score many marks in the examination. So it's always about applying. So risk management, use your Tara strategies, but give example and explain why this will help. Handcrafting is like the high end of the market. So this is a more expensive product, definitely a higher price, premium price. But remember with handcrafting, although it's a higher price, It's a very niche market. The volumes will be quite low. You probably can't run your business entirely on that basis because it's going to have fairly low volumes. Not everybody can afford a shoe that costs £300 to £400. So although the margin is higher, the volume is lower, so it might not generate much profit. Hannah says, is risk analysis, impact, probability, and management is Tara? That's correct. Yeah. So assess the risk. You can use impact and probability, risk management. So it's a popular question where they ask you, assess the risk and suggest risk management strategies or risk controls in the examination. So basically, I don't think you can make enough money probably on handcrafting alone. It probably require both parts of the business. So we've got the different types of shoe, and each one targets a slightly different market. Some are adults, of course. It's going to be the price is going to be different as well. We've got no information on pricing here, but again, it's quite limited. All of them are shoes. Sports shoe might be an obvious thing that they can get into, and they might ask you in the exam about product development. How do we develop products in our market? Looking at this thing here, it seems like the market share is very similar for all of them, especially the first four. Quite similar. I just wonder that given the fact that the four big companies in the market got around the same market share, is there a question potential about merger? Like, should Dearn merge with Rigo? Because Rigo is very good at the 18 to 30. It says later on that Dearn is not very good at that area. Could there be a potential for merging? Now, if you get asked a question about merger in the exam, what model are you going to use in the exam? If you get asked a question about a merger, it might ask you to evaluate whether we should merge. What model are you going to use in the examination? Yep, so this is going to be your suitability, acceptability, and feasibility model. So if you're in the exam, again, a lot of that information is going to be in the post-scene. Post-scene will give you more information about Rigo. They'll give you more information about them. There'll be a whole exhibit on Rigo. Then they'll say there's been a proposed merger and do your evaluation. So you're going to use suitability, acceptability, feasibility. If you ask to recommend in the exam, make sure your recommendation is properly justified. The recommendation without justification will not get you any marks in the examination. It must be justified with clear reasons. And don't say your recommendation in a way that is weak. Don't say, I recommend we do more analysis. You're the consultant, right? So as a consultant, you're supposed to be providing the answer, right? Your job is to provide the answer, not to ask more questions, right? So if I'm paying you, I want a reason. Market is mainly local. There is a little bit of overseas. 25% is online, but it's growing. So this is a bit of an issue. Later on, we find out this market is growing, but for our company, Dearn, their market share is not this much. So their online is not successful. It indicates to me there could be potential questions linking how can they improve that, linking back to e-marketing ideas. So they need to improve. Their online business is not very good at the moment. And this is a growing market. It's been increasing over time. Historically, they've got a very good reputation, but only a small percentage are exported outside, 15%, and they're mainly the handcrafted shoes. So there's a market for exporting, but again, later on, we know that Dearn doesn't do that. So again, I think you could look at potential questions related to strategy. There's a part of the exam syllabus which talks about strategic choices. In strategic choices, you've got models where you ask to identify strategies, but also suitability, acceptability, and feasibility. So you may be asked to recommend options, recommend strategies for the business. If you ask to recommend strategies, a really good tool. What tool would you use if you asked to recommend strategies in the exam? Yeah, so Abhishek, yeah, straight away, Anzop. Yeah, so Anzop is a really great tool you would use. And I think it works quite well here. You've got product development, you've got I mentioned sports shoes as one example, right? You've got market development for this company. They're not overseas. They could potentially go there. Penetration, I think there's a lot of opportunity for that in the present product, present market. What about for unrelated diversification? What diversification strategy could this company do? Diversification, what could they do for diversification under ANZOF? What could they do for diversification under the ANZOF model? ANZOF model, diversification, what could they do? Just tell me in the group chat. For diversification for this company, what could they do in terms of diversification? I think sports shoe is going to be a product development. I don't think it's a diversification, right? So we're going into new products and new markets. So something new, right? New products and new markets at the same time. That's what ANZOF talks about, new and new. Sports shoe, I see it as a product development. Exports is not diversification. Ethical shoe, I still think maybe ethical shoe is maybe there. If you look at big companies like Adidas, right? Adidas started off as a sports shoe company. Do they only make sports shoes now? Adidas, do they only make sports shoes now? I don't think so, right? What do they do? Flip-flops, yeah, why not? Flip-flops. I think you can look at something that's like maybe not connected. Gym gear, I think that's a good example. Yeah, I think Abhishek, that's the best example we've got so far, gym gear. So, you know, if you look at Timberland makes shoes, right? Timberland, what was their journey? It's going to be one of my future podcasts coming up next week about Timberland. For Timberland, I think you'd be looking at, you know, they're not just famous for making shoes now. They've moved into the clothing line based on a strong brand, and this company does have a strong brand. So, you know, I think it's a really nice question on ANZOF. Lots of like things to talk about there. This is the breakdown. Export sales, remember, mainly the handicraft products. I just thought here we've got some information about barriers to entry in the market. Barriers to entry in the market. So we've got like brand name, access to distribution networks. So actually the barrier is good for existing companies in this case, because there's quite strong barriers to entry. It's going to protect the market going forward. Due to growing number of fashion and price conscious customers, more frequently to keep up with regular fashion trends. So I'm thinking here, we need to have to keep up with trends. Flamingo is very good at that. They can produce things in a few weeks. So definitely technology could be a question in the exam, you know, especially using data, AI. Make sure you know the AI applications for big data. And that's a way to sort of understand the market, especially using your prescriptive, predictive, diagnostic analysis to predict what customers will buy next. So definitely you need that back end, but also you need flexible production processes to quickly introduce a new product and change the style in the market. Level of demand is going to be affected by income. It seems like there's like an economic decline here in the market. The proportion of mid-sized shoes has been in an economic slowdown. The proportion of mid-priced and low-priced increases. So you know, it's a PESTEL factor. Economic is one of your PESTEL factors. So it's going to have an impact, right? It's going to have an impact when there's a recession. You may be buying shoes less frequently, maybe looking for cheaper options rather than buying the more expensive product. However, They talk then about growth. Growth is going to come from handicraft overseas, but they're not doing it at the moment. So you may be asked about issues, problems of operating in an overseas market. If they're going to export, what potential problems or issues are they going to have? So that's like an impact question. You know, if we're going to go, if they decide to take their handicraft shoes overseas, what are the problems? What are the issues? What are the benefits? Maybe a suitability, acceptability, feasibility, but also there's potential problems of doing so. Increasing concern about the employment protection legislation, which can have a negative impact on the environment. I'm just thinking here, again, risks and risk management, but also potentially disclosure, integrated reporting could be a factor we might have to use in the future going forward, or environmental audit could be an issue. Despite the impact on disposable income, customers are unwilling to purchase shoes manufactured. So right now, 3 out of the 4 shoes they manufacture are in this overseas market, and customers are fighting against it. So that's really bad for the business going forward. They need to do some changes going forward. Despite the impact on disposable income, customers are refusing to buy. There's like ethical customers in the market. They're spending more money in the market. If they're seen as ethical, it seems there's a competitive advantage in the market. So it's a problem for this business because 3 out of 4 of their products are made overseas. Again, I'm looking at, they mentioned greenhouse gas emissions, integrated reporting in the market. So there seems to be very much concern for the customers about social, environmental factors, pollution factors, goes into the 6 capitals. What are the 6 capitals on integrated reporting? Can you tell me in the group chat, what are those 6 capitals on integrated reporting? There's a very easy way to remember the 6 capitals. Find my husband in northern Sri Lanka. So find my husband. Chakra's missing. There should be 6 chakra, not 4. Find my husband in northern Sri Lanka. Well done, Hannah. You got that one. So yeah. There's also like an environmental impact on the shipping cost. Free returns is going to have a shipping cost in your answer. Okay, so that's going to be an impact on the organization. There's also, again, I keep mentioning environment, so they maybe like have it in mind for a question on the examination. There is one company which is Kind Shoes, which is based on ethical and sustainable ethos. They're more expensive, they're eco-friendly, and they're ethically sourced. So, so this has been like, again, keep mentioning the environment indicates to me environmental audit or integrated reporting is something that might help the company provide more transparency in the market. Recycling is a thing that's also happened. Increasing levels of technology change, 3D printing. So again, impact of technology trends for your PESTEL. There's also things like intelligent shoes, Bluetooth, customized shoes, virtual and augmented reality. So these are all opportunities in the market for a company to grow the market for growth. The problem is for our company, for Dearn, they don't seem to be very tech savvy. They don't seem to have that like high level of tech at the moment. But again, you'll find out in the post, maybe that's an investment they need to make in the future. There is regulation in the market, industry regulation, and there is this Made in Luckland campaign, which is all about setting standards for sustainability and guidance, and they've got this Made in Luckland mark. So it's going to, this is a prestigious brand, and it really should be used in your marketing, especially overseas markets. Legal, a lot of like legal compliance stuff, health and safety, customer protection. So there's quite a lot of compliance costs in the market. And trade union, whenever you see trade union, it's going to be potential resistance to change. Maybe it makes it difficult to cut your staff. Maybe it makes it difficult to cut your costs in the market. So bear that in mind. If you asked about change management, remember change management is about overcoming resistance to change in the market. So make sure that one source of resistance, one of the things we talk about in change management is the leadership style. Should you go for participation, facilitation, negotiation? It's one of the leadership styles that help us to manage change in the organization. So that could be something to consider if you asked a question about change management. We're getting onto the shoes now, Dearn shoes. They are focused on reasonably priced, well-made shoes. So they're kind of in the value for money strategy as a competitive strategy. They're in the value for money, but they're using outsource to cut costs. Now, it said already that a lot of people don't like the outsourcing. They're not buying shoes that are outsourced. It also creates risks in the market, but of course, costs are much lower. I said already, risk management might be a potential question in the exam. In addition to the manufacturing risk, you've also got the shipping risk. In the news, we've seen lots of things about Donald Trump, tariffs, etc. So that's also a risk of overseas markets. So there's a lot of companies now are bringing their manufacturing. That's what Donald wants to do, is reshore. So that could be an issue that because they're currently got a lot of bad publicity, is there a potential question about moving production back? What would the impact of that be on the organization, on the business? Now, this is a bit weird here, right? When I saw this family business, okay, there's a big section of the syllabus which is family business, but this is a bit weird because in a family business, normally the family is involved in the day-to-day running of the business. But in this case, and there's lots of issues with involving the family in the day-to-day running. But the way this is run is the family are not involved in the day-to-day running of the business. So that's a bit weird. So in effect, the family become like the institutional investors, right? They're separated. There is a separation of ownership and control because normally in a family business, there's no separation of ownership. The owners run the business, but in this case, there is a separation. So effectively, the founding family become like the institutional investors or shareholders in the company. So in that case, you do need good corporate governance, right, to make sure that the directors are acting in the best interest of the shareholders. But in this case, there seems to be like a lot of things missing. Although their governance is consistent with good corporate governance in that stock exchange, it might be very limited rules and regulations. So it seems to me that there is an issue that they don't have these committees, right? It seems like these committees are there to control remuneration. They're there to making sure the nomination is good, independent choosing of directors, audit committees. So although it says they're consistent, that doesn't mean that they are very good, because it says they're consistent with good governance, but it seems like the fact that they're not having these committees indicates weak governance. So this is a bit weird, right? This is a bit strange or a bit weird. So if you're listed, you would expect any listed company to have audit committee, remuneration committee. These are standard things you'd expect to have. So there could be a question about, changes to the governance, recommendations. Again, more information will come in the post-scene about that, but there could be questions about that in your examination. Stakeholders mentioned, but no information. As I say to students every year, don't look at the information you've been given, look at what is missing, right? So if things are missing, that means they may include it. So they mention the stakeholders, but they don't tell you anything about the stakeholders. So again, there could be more information in the post-scene stakeholder analysis. If you asked to assess the stakeholders, what do you talk about? If you ask to assess the stakeholders, what do you talk about? Assess stakeholders. Yeah. So definitely that is the Mendeley matrix, right? The power and the interest, power and interest. So there may be some information in the post-scene about stakeholders, and that may lead to a question where you're asked to assess the stakeholders or to recommend how to manage the stakeholders. Are they a key player? Should you keep satisfied? Should you keep informed how to manage the stakeholder groups? The staff are low staff turnover, and they've been there for a long time. So when you've got this loyalty and commitment, it means the culture is good. They're very happy to work there. But if we go for more automation, which is maybe what's needed in this industry, and if you look at my podcast, listen to my podcast, there is a lot of things there about all those big shoe companies. They're going towards tech. They're all going for tech. So if you listen to that podcast about the shoe company, you're going to see that they maybe need to cut staff in the future. Now that's going to create a lot of resistance to change. These are people who've been there a long time. It's like family. So problem, resistance to change. How do you overcome it? Risks is, again, it seems like we've got risks that are already happening in our business. Okay. So we've got risks overseas, quality control, returns, but also, so this is going to damage your brand and reputation going forward. Yeah, there's a recording on YouTube, will be up later on YouTube. Shipping is also shipping risk, like the ship could collapse, it could be fire, there could be all sorts of issues like slowness, there could be strike at the port and you don't get your goods, right? So board looks okay, right? These NEDs, we don't know if they're independent. We don't know if they've been there for 20 years. We don't know anything about them. So again, with the pre-seen case, what information don't you have? We don't know anything about the NEDs. We don't know anything about diversity. We don't know anything about the diversity of the board, right? Are they ethnically diverse? Do they have skills? What skills do they have, right? So again, expect more information about this board structure on the post scene. You've kind of got all the things, but my concern is that they've been there for 20 years. It's like groupthink, no challenge, right? They've been there too long. There's a need to maybe refresh, retire people, bring in new people to the board, and that creates change. That's what you might need for growth. They've also got this weird question where they mention specifically that it's a functional structure. I just wonder, there's a section on the syllabus which is about organizational structure, super niche, but like, would there be a benefit of changing from a functional structure into a product-based structure, division by product, or would it beneficial to adopt a matrix? So they haven't really asked anything on that for ages, and it's kind of weird. So make sure you know the different structures. Functional is what they've got. Make sure you know divisional, and make sure you know matrix structure. They've got a good range. They sell all 4 types of shoes. The problem is they're relying on their third party mainly, except for their handcrafted shoes. They produce 20 different styles. This is like an alarm bell for me. 20 different styles of each shoe. Don't forget, that's not sizes. That is styles, right? So it seems like you've got a really, really massive range of products, right? So one shoe, 20 styles, but then you've got sizes. So it means it's very difficult to get the economies of scale in production. It seems like too many for me, right? Too many. How many styles are you going to have for this business? Maybe it's too many. Maybe that's because as production runs in a factory, the more you can produce the same thing, same shoe, you're going to get economies of scale. If you've got 20 different shoes, you've got a lot of changeover costs and changeover times. It reduces your efficiency significantly, unless you've got robots, and robots can make that changeover super fast, right? So we've got formal shoes with a market leader in semi-formal. Again, they say they're not reaching the 18 to 30 market. Straight away, I'm going e-marketing, right? E-marketing question. How do we improve our e-marketing to reach these people? You know, recommend marketing strategies, e-marketing strategies, your Google search, your SEO, your TikTok, your Instagram, things that are going to target the younger people, mobile advertising. You know, there's lots of really good examples. So that's a potential question in the market. They also mention they've got distribution outlets, which is and they've got good customer service. So again, pointing me towards value chain. That's why I've done the podcast on the value chain on Spotify and YouTube and Apple Podcasts. So make sure you take 10 minutes, and there's more coming. There's one on Timberland coming up to listen to the podcast. It might give you a competitive advantage. They've got no retail outlets outside, no export. Again, ties in with Ansel, market development, problems of going overseas, opportunities of going overseas, an evaluation of whether they should go overseas. And their internet service seems pretty crappy, right? Because I think most internet companies deliver to your door, but they don't offer home delivery service. That seems to me like a basic home delivery service is a basic, but they're not offering it. And they've only got 12% of online sales. Don't forget the market is 25% and growing. So I definitely feel there's opportunity to improve operations. There's an opportunity to improve operations in the market. You can improve operations in the market. So lots of things there we can work on, right? How to improve. It seems to be like, if we can fix that, it will help our growth, right? And where will it help? Market penetration. Penetrate the market by improving our service. We've got this big thing about manufacturing sales. I just thought about this as automation. Automation. Can we help to improve the process using AI, using big data, using technology? They're manufacturing a lot overseas. We've talked about quality issues, risks, etc. Their software seems very weak to me here. Their software seems to be very weak here to me. Therefore, what we need is off the shelf. Off the shelf means like can be susceptible to hacking. There could be, you've got all those customers' credit card details. So it could indicate a question about cyber security controls needed. It could be like, because they're using this like slightly older, not customized software, there could be a cyber security question. They've got no real-time inventory data, which is needed for like AI. Also going to increase your costs if you don't have that. Do they need cloud? So again, it indicates cloud computing. Then we've got the e-commerce is pretty rubbish. They're pretty weak. Limited functionality. Although they've invested in advanced manufacturing technology, they're still outsourcing a lot. So are they really using that effectively at the moment? They've got automated picking, but only for retail, but not for online. Why not for online? It seems weird, right? That they're not using it for both. So weak e-commerce, kind of weak systems, like not fully working effectively, lots of weaknesses in the business. Economic downturn, they talk about the risks again, but in your exam question, they might ask you about risk management and risk controls. We've got human capital. They've got a commitment to their staff, which if we're going to invest in automation, it's going to cause a problem with our values, conflicts with our values. They talk about quality, but their quality is a bit crap because they're using overseas. Okay. Sales are pretty flat. Margin getting slightly better, but again, pretty flat. It's been 26, 26, 27, 26, 26. Marginally dropped, maybe because of your higher, some of your systems are not very efficient. So customers are okay, gone down a bit recently, but falling customer satisfaction, maybe the internet is causing that. Staff satisfaction is pretty good. Seems to be like a good company culture to work for in the organization. So there's some ideas about what may come up in the exam, but you know, in the SBL exam, anything can come up in the SBL exam. So you know, there's no absolutes of things that are going to come up. Last time they asked contextual change. So anything can come in the examination. So can this topic come? Yes. That last time, contextual change, nobody really predicted it. So you know, they ask Harmon and everybody freaks out, right? So basically, you've got to know everything. Baldridge, yes, anything is possible in the exam. I'll just take any questions now for 10 minutes. We've got 10 minutes left. So if anybody's got any questions, happy to answer any questions about the exam. What did you mention about Timberland? I mentioned I was going to do a podcast about Timberland. It's going to come up in the next few days. So make sure you like and subscribe to my Spotify or my YouTube channel, and you will see that whenever it arrives, it will be delivered to you. Can you give me a tip on focus on what would it be? David, what did I tell you? Anything can come. Listen to my podcast, listen to this video, listen to this talk. I think I've been giving tips all the way through. If you've been listening, you should know what the tips are because I've been talking about them all the way through this webinar. So just go back and listen on YouTube if you missed it. How can we quickly pick up the relevant theory and draft the answer? There'll be a keyword in the question which indicates a theory is needed. If they use the word portfolio, for example, that is indicate BCG. The way to understand these keywords is to do more past paper questions. Coffee's arrived. That's good. Can we mention risk mitigation in tabular format? It depends on the question. If it asks for a table, do a table. If it doesn't ask for a table, then you've got to write it in whatever format they say. But they may ask table. If they ask table, you've got to do it in the table. If it asks for a briefing paper and you do table, you will lose professional marks, half the professional marks. Anybody got any more questions before we leave? We've got about 5 more minutes for questions. If you've got any, now's the time to ask. Tips on skepticism marks. Thanks, Hannah. So tips on skepticism marks is make it super explicit in your answer, right? So don't Don't ask questions. That's what the weak student does. Oh, is this correct? Is this a good way to operate? That's a really crappy way, and you will not get any skepticism marks by asking questions. What you've got to do is make it very explicit and say, I am skeptical because of this. State your reasons clearly why you're skeptical and be very clear about why you're being skeptical in the exam. Yeah, don't use tabular unless the question states it. Yeah, so skepticism, never ask questions. You always got a question, which means I am concerned about the behavior of the CEO. I'm skeptical of, normally it's a viewpoint that they've made, and you're skeptical of the viewpoint, and say why, because, justify. Yeah. Use the tabular format, and the question says briefing paper, you lose all the professional marks. Should you link the whole answer to the exhibits? Yep. Everything must be linked to the shoe industry. If you write any knowledge, you score 0 in the exam. Knowledge scores 0. Knowledge is not going to get you any marks in SBL. You only get marked if you apply the knowledge. Yangi says, what about points? Normally the points is paragraph target is divided by 2. Usually, as a rough guide, 12 marks requires 6 paragraphs. 6 paragraphs. It depends on the right exceptions to that. If they say assess the stakeholders and suggest management, you've got to do 3 things, so you divide by 3. But generally, a general rule is divide by 2. See, and people always ask me, right, what did I say? Anything can be tested, right? So when people say, can project initiation document be tested? The answer is yes. If it's on the syllabus, it can be tested. They can test anything. There was an article about project management. One of the most recent articles is about project management. If you want to look at my YouTube channel, I've got some articles where you can listen to the ACCA articles rather than read them, so it might save you some time in the exam. The preparation stage. Just started it. I've got the first one up. It's about cryptocurrency, where it's an audio version of the article. So please go and like the YouTube channel. You'll see those articles there. It's easier to listen rather than read the boring article, often quite dull. I've got a couple of minutes left for questions. So if you've got any last minute questions, please type them now. Thanks, Anna. I'm going to close the question unless there's anybody else coming in. Thanks, Hannah, for your thank you. Thank you for your thank you. Okay, guys, so please keep an eye. There's lots of amazing stuff in the podcasts. If you're weak on any area of the syllabus, culture, Balogun, BCG, there's a 10-minute podcast and everything. I always advise my students, this is free. So if you're weak in any area, every day, 2 podcasts every day. You need 2 podcasts every day. Just listen. It will massively help you. Just listen, go for a walk. Every day, 2 podcasts is what you need. Thanks, Vanda, for signing up for the double mock course. Yeah, double mock course. We've only got about 5 spots left on the double mock course. It's going to reopen on Saturday, so it's currently closed because we're full, but we are going to reopen that double mock course on Saturday. So get in touch if you want to do that course. Okay, guys, thanks very much, and we will see. Good luck in your examination. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we will see you on the other side. Okay, hopefully you're going to make it through the exam. Thanks very much, and have a good day.